Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and today we're going to be talking about a subject that I think is important to a lot of us who keep fish, and that is how to maximize their color. So stay tuned. Alright, so one of the things that we need to do when we're maximizing fish color is consider the fish that we're keeping. There are some fish, a lot of the more popular fish in the hobby, that are going to hold their color almost independently of a lot of the things that we do. So things like neon tetras, or pretty much all types of tetras, gouramis, platies, guppies, swordtails. Those more common tropical fish are common for a reason. And that's because they're going to hold their color independent of substrate, independent of background, independent of whether or not they're the dominant fish in the tank. And so that's one of the reasons why they're popular. But there are other things that we can do to maximize color for those fish that maybe they might change their color depending on a number of factors. So first thing, the types of foods that you feed. It's important to give a fish a varied diet that's appropriate for the types of fish that you're keeping. That varied diet will help bring out their colors a little bit more vibrantly, and it'll keep the fish healthy. Fish health is a definite factor in whether or not your fish are going to remain colorful. And I think a lot of us have seen this before, where we might have some fish that are sick, or maybe they're getting old and they start to lose their color, especially towards the end of their life. And so overall fish health is going to play a major factor, or at least a factor, in keeping your fish colorful. The types of foods that you feed are important. The water parameters are important. So if the water is too cold or too hot, they may begin to lose their color. If the water is high in ammonia or nitrites and they're experiencing ammonia burn, or they're lacking oxygen, that may play a role in fish color. Even the other types of fish in the tank may play a role. And so if there are fish that are bullies, the fish that are getting bullied may reduce their colors. And this is especially true for cichlids. And we're going to talk about them in a minute and talk about how we can maximize their color as well. The other thing to consider is if you're keeping cichlids in particular, females just typically don't get a lot of color. If you're dealing with haps or peacocks and even some types of mbunas, that's why things like yellow labs and red zebras, they're really popular because the females and males both tend to have a lot of color. But for some cichlids, sometimes they're just brown, sometimes they're just silver, while the males display really vibrant colors. But the males may not display those vibrant colors all the time. And so that's another fact that we have to consider. If you're dealing with fish like cichlids, if there are dominant males in the tank, those subdominant males may not show a lot of color. If you have males in the tank and there aren't a lot of females in the tank, they may not show as much color because they're not displaying for those females. And so usually the best color that you're going to see, and a lot of times when you look on the internet and you see these awesome pictures of fish in full color, often these are colors that are displayed to females right around the breeding time, and that's when you're going to maximize your colors for a lot of different types of fish, particularly the cichlids. Something else you should probably consider, the lights. What type of lights do you have in your tank? If you have a dull, old fluorescent light, that may not bring out the colors very well in your fish. Where if you've got a newer light, maybe an LED, that will certainly enhance the colors of fish. Depending on the spectrum of light, that may also enhance the colors of fish. And so lighting can play a major role in whether or not your fish, one, are comfortable in their surroundings, and two, are going to display their full color. So one of the biggest factors that I think affects fish color, and we've talked about it a number of times, and it is perhaps one of the easiest things to deal with, is the color of your substrate and the color of your background. Those two things can play a major immediate role in the color of your fish. And we've provided lots of examples throughout our videos. And so for instance, the sahicas that we keep, when they were on a black substrate with a black background, they appeared very dark brown. When we moved them to a brown substrate, they got a lot lighter, and we started to see the purples and the yellows and the reds, and they look absolutely beautiful. A lot of cichlids are like this. So for instance, shell dwellers, things like the multis that we keep, or the gold ocellatus, or brevis, or similis, if you put a lot of the shell dwellers on a black sand, they're going to look darker, they're going to look more muddied up. When you put them on a white colored sand, they get a really bright silver. You start to see the stripes appear a lot easier. Other examples that we've had in the fish room are Severums, both our green Severums and our red shoulder Severums. When they're on a black background and a black substrate, especially the green Severums, they appear almost blackish, grayish, brown with a little bit of green. If you were to put those fish on a lighter substrate, you'd start to see the bars, you'd start to see the green color for the red shoulder severums. The red starts to come through on their, right near their gill plate. And so the color of a substrate, the color of a background is one of the easiest, quickest things you can do that probably affects fish color more than any of the other things I've talked about. So I encourage you, if you're looking to optimize the color of your fish, one of the things that you can do, go on Google Images, find the fish that you're looking for, but pay attention to the substrate that's in that picture and the background, whether or not there's plants, because if you find something that you think is really cool looking and has a lot of color, look at the backgrounds and the substrates to see if that's what's in your tank. Because what happens from time to time is we'll have people who are disappointed with the colors of their fish, and we'll be asked, hey, you know what, how come this fish looks blue in the pictures that I see, but when I have it, it looks almost black? Well, look at the substrate. If you're using black substrate and maybe the picture was on white sand, that's probably the main reason. A really good example is the leleupi that we have, Neolamprologus leleupi. When we first got them, they were orange, they were small. We put them in a 10-gallon just to quarantine them on black gravel. Within 2 days, the fish had lost almost all of their orange color and were almost black. Quite frankly, they looked terrible. After they went through quarantine, we put them in the 33 long with that white sand, and within about 12 hours, they were bright orange again. And so fish often mimic the colors of their substrate and their background. Of course, there is another component to all of this, and that is genetics. You can have fish with awesome genetics, and they're going to bring forth really great color, and you don't have to do a lot. But even fish with great genetics, if you put them on the wrong background with the wrong substrate, they're not going to look that great. If you've got fish with horrible genetics, it may not matter what you do, they may not realize their full potential because their genetics are holding them back. But if you want to maximize even those relatively poor genetics, change the background, change the substrate, and they may color up. And so again, that gets back to what we've been saying for a long time. When you are building an ecosystem, when you're building that tank, think about the fish that you want to keep in that tank. Have an idea of what's going in that tank before you set it up, and that will help you maximize your colors. It'll help you maximize the beauty of your fish, and I think you're going to enjoy it a lot more. So we appreciate you watching. If you like this video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.